Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to join my colleagues in discussing some of these issues that are at the forefront of our minds this school year. I was intrigued by today's topics of discussion related to both SEL and tech, and wanted to take a moment halfway between our sessions to discuss the overlap between SEL and EdTech and consider how they can work in tandem to foster student engagement and well-being. I want to show you how you can take the tech you already have to better support your SEL efforts and demonstrate how both can be woven seamlessly throughout the school day to support student engagement and well-being. As a school psychologist, I am painfully aware of the SEL needs of our students. Especially coming out of the pandemic, my own caseload easily tripled over the course of the last 3 years. Just a cursory search online illustrates the intense need. One of EdWeek's own recent surveys this past fall showed that less than half of middle and high school students report that they have an adult at their school that they can talk to when they feel stressed or anxious. And fully 50% of students cite that one of their greatest obstacles to learning is feeling depressed, stressed, or anxious. We know that counselors are in drastically short supply. And we also know that SEL, while not a mental health intervention per se, is a Tier 1 universal intervention. SEL programming and practices are at the beginning of the continuum of social, emotional, and behavioral health services. And SEL instruction and practice should be universal, reaching everyone across every subject matter and in every class and space on campus. Why do we emphasize this so much? Because we know that it works. We have the literature base to show that time and again, SEL instruction can be attributed to significant positive outcomes. Greater SEL skills, of course, attitudes towards school, positive social behavior and academic performance, and also significantly lower levels of conduct problems and emotional distress for those that participate in really strong SEL programming. The statistic that we love to cite is that these students involved in one of the largest meta-analysis studies is that they demonstrated an average of an 11 percentile point gain in achievement, showing that SEL programs can be tied to significant improvements in progress in academic success. So how do we do it? How do we allocate resources and meet the needs of all of our students? How do we build SEL programming and weave it into the school day in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming to teachers, like there's one more thing added to their already overflowing plate? And as I consider the positioning of EdTech in our classrooms, many of those same questions come to mind. How do we build a learning environment or a school environment where the tech is thoughtfully integrated, available to all students in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming and is not an addition to the to-do list, but rather, much like well-implemented SEL, it actually begins to take things off of teachers' plates, save them time, allow them to be more efficient and engage their students, and ultimately, of course, increase their depth and breadth of learning. And we know that EdTech is closely tied to enhancing student engagement. A 2019 study demonstrated that improved student engagement through the use of technology led to a number of positive outcomes, increasing students' motivation, increasing their discipline-specific knowledge, enhancing their sense of belonging and well-being, and improving peer relationships through group learning and collaboration facilitated by the education technology. EdTech at its best creates a more personalized and authentic learning experience for students. It enables students to direct their own learning and have more autonomy, more agency, and more choice, and enables greater collaboration and fosters empathy among peer groups. These words should sound really familiar because they're also commonly heard in SEL conversations. This model from CASTLE is a fairly ubiquitous framework and known pretty well to teachers who are familiar with social emotional learning. The 5 core competencies are seen here in the middle of this wheel, and they include self-awareness and self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Another model that's also particularly familiar to educators is CASTLE's 3 signature practices, an additional framework that we can use to implement the 5 core competencies that we saw on the previous slide. So these 3 practices are a way of weaving those core competencies together in a way that can be incorporated in every subject, across every space, really, on campus. They are very concrete ways to incorporate SEL strategies and sort of broaden the implementation of teaching of the core competencies. And these include welcoming activities, engaging strategies, and optimistic closures. And not so coincidentally, they are also excellent opportunities to leverage EdTech to enhance and deepen these lessons and experiences. The first is welcoming activities. Welcoming activities can be used to build community among peers, teachers, adults, and students to set the tone for the day or for the lesson ahead and to connect to content that is going to be presented. It's really simple. It's opening the day or a class period or even a staff meeting with a welcoming or inclusive activity, a routine or a ritual that can be established to help accomplish all these things: build community, set the tone, and connect content. How do you do it? One really simple illustration. A colleague has established this incredible routine at the beginning of the school year that she then uses on a daily basis. So utilizing the interactive flat panel at the front of the room, there's a slide deck running as students enter the classroom in the morning. A positive morning message maybe that shares announcements, a theme for the day, maybe instructions for morning work, some must-dos or may-dos to get the students going first thing. But here's the magic, and here's why EdTech can be so powerful. This is used to be able to get students working and learning right away in a calm classroom setting, while the teacher can greet each student individually at the door. So while the class is already getting started on their work, the rest of the students can be greeted and do a bit of a temperature check or a check-in with the teacher one-on-one. So this teacher is seamlessly integrating so many powerful classroom strategies that support a student starting their day ready to learn. Imagine being greeted by your teacher with a warm, welcoming, personal smile at the beginning of every school day, where somebody is looking into your eyes and saying your name and asking, "How are you today? What did you have for breakfast? Did you win your baseball game yesterday? And I'm so happy you're here." This practice is recruiting self-awareness on the part of each individual student, self-management in the form of establishing this routine that the students are familiar with, social awareness in that students have to be aware of those around them, the things that they're working on, and relationship skills. It's a positive way to start each day that fosters a sense of belonging in the classroom and builds that community. And also a sense of autonomy as the student chooses what activity are they going to start with, how are they going to, once they're released into the classroom, what are they going to do, and how are they going to get going with their day. Each child also has a chance to get their voice heard and has an opportunity to make a connection with an adult at the school. Think of the broader climate and community that this routine builds, each student being personally validated and then joining a larger group in a shared experience. The technology forms the foundation of this welcoming activity and makes it accessible to all students. Students who can read, great. Students who can't, maybe there's images of what they're supposed to be doing on that flat panel at the front of the classroom. In a similar way, these engaging strategies can be implemented throughout the school day. So there's 2 main categories, brain breaks and transition techniques. Brain breaks can help us to anchor learning, to regain focus, to enhance creativity, and transition techniques help students successfully shift from one learning experience or one activity like lunch recess or music class to another learning experience. So some really practical examples of this might be, ending a class period or a subject matter by taking a poll or a vote about the content that you've been learning with your classroom utilizing software. This allows all voices to be heard, even those that tend to be on the quieter side or might be too shy to raise their hands, they can still contribute. Maybe allowing students to take a moment on their laptops to find an illustration of a concept that you've been teaching, but one that's personally relevant for them that can anchor their learning. Another really powerful brain break is a mindful minute, so allowing students to decompress and refocus, perhaps using a calming video or mindfulness software, maybe even a virtual reality experience if you have an opportunity to access that kind of technology, to allow students to just, come back to the center, refocus, re-engage, and take a minute to focus on what's coming next as well. So why does this work? It engages students. It seizes on the opportunity to personalize their learning and make a learning experience very authentic. It can honor the diversity of needs among your student population by allowing kids time to reset and re-engage in their own, optimal learning state and coming back to the larger group sort of ready to learn. Utilizing kids' own interests and their talents, their passions, maybe their cultural and familial experiences, allows them to personalize learning and make it more relevant to them. Something like using a mindful minute supports students' self-awareness and self-management and stress management. We know from brain science that a stressed brain can't learn, and so being able to take a mindful minute allows students to sort of calm and re-engage. And it also, through these engaging strategies, can provide opportunities for students to connect with one another and even practice some relationship skills and social awareness. And even students with, processing difficulties or other kinds of disabilities might actually, require a more formal transition in this way in order to be successful. And that helps you sort of impact classroom management overall. And finally, there's optimistic closures. These are not necessarily, a cheerful, rah-rah, happy ending to a meeting or a class period, but rather it's a time to reflect on shared and individual experiences, to connect, to help leave a meeting or a class session with appreciation, with energy, and to help end in a thoughtful and meaningful way. So a number of ways to do it. A couple of ideas, you might post an interactive mood meter for students to check in about how they're feeling at the end of the day. You might have an opportunity to send an email of gratitude to a friend, or schedule an email to be sent to yourself later on, sort of an email to your future self about what do you want to remember or what you want to take away from this lesson. There's software where each student can submit a data point and create a graph in real time about their level of understanding of the subject matter for the day or the lesson for the day. And this can recruit not just self-awareness, but social awareness, as students see in real time, oh, wow, I had a really tough time with this lesson, and so did some of my friends. Or I had a really easy time with this lesson, but I see that half of my class really struggled with it. How can I help them? How can I support them? And what does that mean for us moving forward? Type of closing activity allows for self and social awareness, again, allowing all voices to be heard, allowing each person to be personally validated and to have an opportunity to speak up should they want to. It's often said that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience, and an optimistic closure provides the opportunity to do just that. This kind of activity can be facilitated by, enhanced by, enriched by education technology. These are by no means the extent of the capacities of education technology, but they're intended to be really simple, approachable, practical ways to fuel your SEL programming. My hope is that you will walk away from this conceiving of SEL and EdTech as complementary and not additive for your teachers, and that when both are thoughtfully and intentionally implemented, they can in fact work together to foster and enrich those critical hard and soft skills that make your students emotionally equipped and practically equipped to participate in our 21st century world. I'd also like to extend an invitation to you and the teachers at your schools to attend a free webinar that we'll be offering in the next few weeks, which will provide them with some concrete and really practical strategies for doing what we talked about today, implementing SEL enriched and enhanced by EdTech. If you'd like to participate or at least share that info out to your teachers, please use this QR code up on the screen to register and to share information.